Hello my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/EntitledPeople, where people truly believe the world revolves around them and nobody matters. And in today's episode, guys, OP's own cousin demands he buy him a brand new car because the guy can't afford one. And the story just gets worse and worse, that's all I can say. I hope you guys enjoy the stories today. Hit subscribe if you haven't. And as always, you can send or link your Reddit post to this email right here. We're diving in. So I work at a local grocery store, and this took place on a Sunday night a few weeks ago. I was about to finish my shift, and the lines have started to die down, so my manager looks at the clock and told me to go ahead and sign out, so I can work on my putbacks before clocking out. All of a sudden, up walks a woman who had her 2 kids in tow with her, while my manager is standing right beside me, getting ready to pull my drawer. She then says to me to go ahead and work on putting back things, when I hear Karen's shrill voice saying, excuse me, where do you think you're going? I say to her, oh, I was about to go to work on putting some stuff back on the shelves, and that's when Karen interrupts me and says, nuh-uh, honey, you're not going nowhere until you've checked me out. I've been standing here for 5 minutes waiting on you. The least you could do is check me out. That's when my manager says, but ma'am, she's getting ready to go home. Her shift is over. I'll ring you up instead. And Karen says, no, I said I waited in line, and she needs to stay here and ring us up. Again, my manager says there's no difference between her ringing up the things or I, but Karen's not having it. I assured my manager that I can take one more person before I left. So I tried chatting up the woman while scanning her items, to ask how her day is and whatnot, only to be met with some passive-aggressive one-word responses, and the occasional exclamation of, puh. And while I was scanning, my manager taps me on the shoulder and whispers, hey, I'll work on doing the putbacks later. You go ahead and finish ringing her up, and then you can go sign off and clock out. Your relief's here. So I finished the transaction for her, and I was about to sign off when Karen starts up again. She says, wait, I have one more item you forgot to scan, darling. She then tosses a chocolate bar onto the belt. And my manager says, but ma'am, that piece of candy wasn't a part of that transaction. And Karen says, well, it is now, so do it. Scan it. I want you to scan that chocolate bar before getting off your shift. At this point, my manager whispers, go ahead and sign off, quick. I quickly nodded and signed off as directed, and as I was about to clock off on another monitor, I hear Karen say, why'd you let her go? She had to scan one more item. Tell her to come back to me right now. She then screams to me, hey lady, come back here and scan this. You ain't going home yet. What you doing? I need to be serviced. Hearing Karen say that, my manager looked at me like she had trouble holding in her laughter as she scanned her one item. She then told me to just have a good night, and man, I wish I could get her a gift for having my back like that. Yeah, so this woman is a great example of why I can never work in retail, guys, because, reading the post, I was so annoyed at whatever little game the Karen was playing. What the heck is the difference between OP or another person scanning her stuff? It seems to me like Karen just wanted to assert her dominance over an employee just to say I'm the customer, so you do whatever I order you to do. Which is so stupid, go home, Karen, nobody likes you. I've been wanting to share a Karen story for a while, and this happened just a few days ago and is possibly the stupidest story ever. So a few days ago, my mom had to go to Walmart to pick up a prescription and grab a few groceries. She hates Walmart, so we always try to hurry. So while she waits in line for the prescription, my brother and I went to look for the few groceries that we needed. We reach the grocery part of the store and we start shopping when we finally go down to the drinks. We see that there's only 2 gallons of apple juice left, so I go and grab them when a woman comes up. She sees me take them, but I turn around and ask if she's also coming to get apple juice. The woman says yes, so I offer her one of them and we can take the other. Now, I don't know how or why she escalated things so fast, but she tells me to give her both of them because she needs both. Again, I tell her that I'll give her one of them and we'll take the other, and hearing me say that, she's not happy. She starts demanding that I give her both, and I tell her flat out, no. My brother's not saying anything because he's not good with confrontation, and we just want to get apple juice, so I say, ma'am, do you want this one or not? Karen says, just give me both. Like, how hard is that to understand? I want them both, meaning two. I just respond, so no. Karen says, yes, just give me them. As she starts to progress into a scene, my brother starts looking anxious, but he chimes in, hey, look, we're trying to be nice. Karen says, I don't care. I need apple juice for a party, so just give them to me. You're wasting my time. Eventually, I get tired of this, and out of spite, I put them both in our cart. I then turn around and motion for my brother to follow. She then starts yelling that we're inconsiderate people who don't respect anyone, but we just head to the front. It was seriously the stupidest thing ever. Yeah, 100% I'll agree, that does sound like the stupidest thing ever. And guys, I love that OP just took both and put both in the cart because she definitely deserved no apple juice. Like, I bet every report card that Karen got in school said does not play well with others and also does not know how to share. So listening to all your lovely stories brings back so many memories of why I got out of retail. People who have never worked it just can't comprehend some of the things we see every day. But I guess it's like most places. So since you've been giving me flashbacks, I'll share one of my favorite personal stories from my time in the trenches. This took place on Black Friday, 2003. I'm working as a tech for a large US electronics retailer, and it's right before the gates open. So the pep talks have happened, everyone's in their place, and the store manager unlocks the inner door and chains. Everybody sort of holds their breath as the outer doors are unlocked and they slide open. The store manager barely has time to hurdle the entrance rails before this mass of people push past us in a frenzy of greed and entitlement. Towards the front of the pack is a woman who's probably in her mid-40s, dragging her elderly mother, who's easily 70 years old or so, along on her quest for cheap consumer goods. Then, like a stereotypical action movie, everything suddenly slows down. Sounds become muffled and indistinct. We all see the old woman stumble, and we can see the terror in her eyes as she trips and falls to one knee and she lurches forward. We then see her daughter look back over her shoulder at her mother, who's now in a very real danger of being trampled. And the daughter just lets her go, no hesitation in her step, and no look of regret in her eyes. The daughter's head snaps forward, intent on her prizes as she merges back into the crowd. The mother drops to the ground, surrounded by chaos, and it reminds me of watching Platoon. At this point, we snap back to real time, and myself and two rather large security guys and the manager all jump the rail to try to push the mob back through the door so we can get to the old woman. I end up helping her get off the floor and out of the way while the security guys play riot police and trade insults with the mob. We get the woman back in the store office, and she's shaken and scared, and a bit bloody due to her split lip and her nose impacting the floor. The store manager puts a call into EMS, and we try to keep her calm until they arrive. She starts asking for her daughter, afraid she might need to go to the hospital, so we start paging overhead, and I go out to try to locate her in person. I'm out looking for 30 minutes or so, with no luck, with pages still sounding overhead as I work my way back to the office. The EMTs have arrived at this point, and they have the woman on a gurney checking her out. The woman's got bumps and bruises, but they think she's fine. She needs to go be checked over anyways. But the woman doesn't want to go without her daughter, so they agree to wait a bit longer. So an hour after the fall, the daughter rolls up to customer service, ignoring the huge register lines, with an overflowing cart of product. The woman then demands that we check her out immediately so she can tend to her injured mother to take her to the emergency room. She starts ranting immediately about how horrible we are for caring about money more than her mother's health. And the customer service chick isn't having it, I'm not having it, and the manager's trying really hard to not let loose on the lady. Even the EMTs are disgusted. But before any of us can really do anything, the tiny little elderly woman, wrapped up in bandages who's strapped to a gurney, looks up at her daughter square in the eyes and she says, "F you, Emily," before turning to the EMTs with, "Let's roll, boys." The daughter freaks out at this, and while her mother's being wheeled towards the entrance, she grabs a hold of a police officer who is standing nearby, tearfully demanding that he do something about the situation. The officer takes one look at her and says, "Lady, I heard the whole thing. You can effing wait in line like everybody else, because if you cause any more problems for these people, you'll be leaving with me." So yeah, the post ends right there, guys, but wow, did that daughter really use her injured mother as a way to cut in line? Like, how heartless do you have to be to let your 70-year-old mother fall down and not even look back and like keep shopping, all to save a few dollars? Guys, I am shaking my head. Like, it's funny how she swears at customer service saying that they're more about money than her mother's health, when she herself cared more about merchandise than her own mom. And seriously, she deserved that FU from her mom. Okay, so I feel like this is such a cliche Reddit story, but I'm really struggling with what to do, so here we go. I'm my mother's oldest biological child. When I was 5, my father passed away, and she remarried my stepdad when I was 8. When I was 9, I was sent away to live with my father's sister, who lived in the States because her husband didn't want me to live there anymore. They used to pay my aunt some money to watch me, but when I was 14 years old, that stopped. My aunt and uncle worked low-paying jobs, and they had 2 kids of their own, so they really couldn't afford the extra expense of having me around. Despite that, they let me stay and continued to treat me like one of their own. I very rarely saw my mom. I think I saw her 5 times between 9 and 18. She never even called. She even went on to have 3 more children who are now 19, 18, and 16 with my stepdad. Growing up, I used to stalk my siblings and parents on social media to see what their life was like, and it was polar opposite to mine. They regularly went on expensive vacations, lived in a massive house, and they owned the latest gadgets. I went to college and got married at 23. My mothers and siblings have no idea I'm married, and I'm currently 28 and doing very well financially. My husband and I own our own home, have several very profitable investments, and work high-paying jobs. My cousins and I all contributed to help my aunt and uncle to finally purchase their own home last year. So recently, my mom showed up to my aunt's house begging for financial help. Apparently, my stepdad suffered from a gambling addiction a few years ago, and they lost all their savings. And with everything that happened during COVID, he's also lost his job, so they can't afford to keep their house without help. My aunt explained that she didn't have any money to help her, and when my mother demanded to know how she could afford her new house if she had no money, she explained what me and my cousins had done. My mom then asked for my number, and when she called and explained the situation, I told her I couldn't help. She then kept begging me and claimed my siblings would be made homeless if I didn't help them, and that I'm the daughter and I should help the family. I told her no and hung up before she could reply. Since then, I've been receiving messages after messages from my mom, my siblings, and even my stepdad begging me for help. I've never spoken to my siblings in my life, and they've begun harassing my husband and my sister-in-law. They've also reached out to my aunts and cousins multiple times, trying to get them to convince me to change my mind, but I'm not going to. I'm so angry with them all. They threw me away, and when they need something, they come crawling back. But the guilt's also starting to set in, and I don't know if I'm being an a-hole, so am I? Yeah, so I'm pretty sure everybody and their dog would agree that OP's not the a-hole in this situation. Like, these people are related by blood, but technically they're strangers at this point. And for them to harass OP after years of no contact, asking for money, guys, I would be fuming. Like, they literally threw away their child and only come back in contact after finding out OP has money and can save them. In my opinion, they made their bed and they can lie in it. Let them go frickin' homeless. And while we're on the topic of family members just being total leeches, guys, listen to this post. So first, a little context. I'm 32 years old and I work as a banker for a German bank. I live in the US and help with contracts and other business meetings with US companies. I make a nice bit of money, and I've earned 2 additional BA degrees and my MBA while being in the US. I have a cousin in Europe who's a school teacher, and he's married to a woman who does not work, so you can imagine that they don't have much expendable income for desires. Most of their income just covers their necessities. So last Christmas, I took my girlfriend, now fiancé, to Europe, and we did a small Euro trip to the typical European destinations like Paris, Munich, and London. While in Europe, we spent some time with my family there, and I introduced her to my brother, my grandparents, etc. And I also encountered my entitled cousin. Now, most conversations I had with him always led to how tight money was for him, and how he was saving up for a new car. At that point, I didn't read too much into it because money was tight for a lot of my family in Europe. In one conversation, my cousin asked me to accompany him to a car dealership to check out some new cars. He wanted to upgrade the old rust bucket he was driving. And thinking nothing of it, I just said, sure. So I got my fiance and my sister-in-law an appointment to a premium beauty salon. And while she was having fun, my cousin picked me up and we went to an authorized Jeep dealership. We walked around checking out the new models and whatnot, and even took models on a test drive, and my cousin really liked the Grand Cherokee. And the sales guy explained the benefits and features and what options there are to buy, finance, and lease. So my cousin says that he wants to buy the car, and that's when the guy starts the paperwork. While the salesperson was doing that, we continued inspecting his soon-to-be ride, and he was really excited. And then the sales guy comes back, and this is the conversation that ensued. So the sales guy says to my cousin, so let's get the paperwork started on buying the car. Will you be financing the vehicle, leasing, or... My cousin interrupts him and says, no problem. Money will not be a problem. We're gonna pay cash. Here, take this. My cousin then shoves the paperwork in front of me, and I assumed he wanted me to look over it to ensure that everything looks fine. So I read through all the fine print, asked some follow-up questions, and concluded the contract seemed like a great deal. I then passed the paperwork back to my cousin. And my cousin says, why are you handing it back to me? I say to him, because it's your contract. My cousin says, so I have to sign it? I tell him, yes, it's your car. He then says, okay, and signs the paperwork and hands it back to the sales guy. And that's when the sales guy asked, so how would you like to pay? And that's the point where my cousin says to me, hey, just give the guy a check. I say to him, excuse me? My cousin repeats himself and says, write him a check. I tell him, no. He then says, what do you mean no? You're rich. I tell him, 1, why should I buy you a car? And 2, I'm here because you asked me to be here and go car shopping. I assumed just to hang out with you. He then pulls me aside and says, look, I don't have the money to buy a car like this. It's Christmas and I want this car, so just write him a check and we can go. I respond, I don't care what you want. I'm not buying this car for you. If you want it, you have to buy it. At this point, my cousin's getting angry and he says, I can't believe how greedy you are. You make 5 times the money I do in America. You need to pay for the car. I say to him, just because I make more and have more money doesn't mean I'm obligated to buy you or anybody else in the family anything. My cousin says, listen to me, I need a new car. I don't have the extra income. I work just to pay bills to keep the lights on. Just be a pal and write me a check. You gave Uncle 5,000 euros to buy a car, so how's this any different? I respond, Uncle works hard and he takes care of grandmother, and as a thanks to him for doing that, I sent him money to help him buy a car that was safer for grandma to ride in. So yeah, he ignored what I totally said and he says, so do you have money to pay for the car or not? I tell him I can buy the car if I wanted to, but I won't write you a check for the car right now. He then says to me, you write this check or I'm gonna sue you. At this point, the sales guy steps in and says, gentlemen, have you had a chance to discuss things? And my cousin says, you'll get a check. He's gonna write one right now. I then say to the sales guy, so it appears that my cousin brought me here under false pretenses, and since he doesn't have the funds necessary for the purchase of the vehicle, he wasted your time and mine. I'm telling you, you'll not receive a check from me. If a check is written today, it'll be one from him, not me. So the salesman is obviously a little upset that he's not making the sale. And my cousin says, stop being so selfish, just buy the car. I tell him no again, and that's when he gets up and he leaves shouting, and he yells at me to find my own way home. The sales guy turns to me and says, wow, did he really expect you to just buy him a new car? I say to him, I guess so. I'm as baffled as you are. So I call my uncle and he says he'll be there in a few minutes, and the sales guy and I sat down for a cup of coffee and talked about what just happened. I told him my cousin doesn't have a lot of money and that they most likely would never see a penny from him, so consider that sale completely gone. It's been 3 months since I heard from my cousin, and the majority of our family took my side on the matter. I'm getting married in the fall, and as a thank you gift to my uncle and my grandmother, I bought them plane tickets to the US and paid for hotels. My cousin and his wife are not invited to my wedding. Guys, entitled family members are the worst. And it's always the family members that want the most outrageous things because they happen to be related, right? Like, it's absurd how the cousin basically lured OP to the dealership and was like, yep, he'll pay. He'll write you a check because he's really, really rich. So yeah, like I said, the story gets much, much worse. So listen to this next part. So I've just received a call from my uncle in Europe, and if you've read the previous post, you know who that is. He called to inform me that my entitled cousin really filed a lawsuit against me saying that we had an oral agreement and I told him I would buy him a car. And here's the kicker. The guy's suing me for the loss of the car's value, emotional stress, and loss of income because apparently his rust bucket died a month ago and he couldn't make it to work. So the guy's suing me for roughly $140,000. $80,000 for the car, $3,000 for the loss of income, and $57,000 for emotional stress. My uncle has a friend whose son's a lawyer and he's willing to take my case. My uncle also drove to the Jeep dealership to talk to the sales rep who was present when the cousin demanded the car. He said he'll testify in my defense. Now, I thought not to take care of the situation and just say F it. Like, I know it's just a cruel tactic of my cousin trying to get me to buy him that car, but not with me. So after this, I'm done with him and his side of the family. Update number 1. So I just got off the phone with my lawyer and he told me the case most definitely will go to court and will not be dismissed. As I understand, there's a ruling in place that if a complainant claims a monetary reimbursement over 120,000 euros, it has to go to trial. This also explains how my cousin came up with those arbitrary numbers. To clarify, $140,000 US is roughly 122 to 125,000 euros, depending on the exchange rate. However, there is hopeful news. My lawyer is very optimistic that he can pressure my Nimrod of a cousin to withdraw the claims when the trial starts. He also talked with my cousin's lawyer, and his cousin's willing to resolve the matter privately instead of in front of a judge. My cousin's lawyer said that they'll be satisfied with the payment of 100,000 euros. And naturally, my lawyer said, F no. In addition, my cousin's lawyer hasn't provided enough evidence. He's also more confident that the case will be dropped by the prosecutor's office because my cousin's lawyer's only piece of evidence is my cousin's word. He's also preparing a lawsuit against my cousin for when the lawsuit against me is dropped or won. It seems the whole thing will be over soon. And the majority of my family is on my side, and my grandmother split because she fears this matter is tearing the family apart. I hope to have this matter resolved in the next 2 weeks. So yeah, there you guys have it. Just when you think things can't get worse, they did. Like, family members suing other family members for things is just insane, guys. And seriously, I'm actually surprised that lawyers actually took the case and they didn't laugh the cousin out of the office for some he said, she said stuff. But guys, I'm not a lawyer and I don't know if oral contracts are legally binding at all. And in this case, fake oral contracts. Because OP never said he would buy the car. But guys, that's r/EntitledPeople for ya. And if you guys enjoyed the stories today, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing because the stories just keep getting crazier. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/petty revenge, where OP's Karen neighbor won't stop calling 911 on everybody and she gets taught a lesson she won't forget. Go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.